What's up, everybody? My name is Indy, and the gentleman right over here, right next to me, that is Mr. J. Powell from Powell Group Consulting, and this is a super special episode of Indie Game Business. Today we got Joe Lieberman, and he is from Antlion, and he's an industry veteran, and we are talking about the constantly evolving game business scene and how you can adapt to it.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And Dan and I are trying to remember how to do this because we've it's been a while since we had a live podcast. So, but yes, anyway, we are here. Joe, welcome to the show. I have to admit, Joe asked me a year ago if we could get him on the show, and
2 years ago,
the Discord message got fallen between the cracks, and he's like, "Hey, you never responded to this," and I was like, "Oh shit, you're right." So anyway, after a long overdue, Joe, tell us how you got into the industry initially and walk us through your career up to this point.
Okay. Boy. So I was a sophomore at University of Florida, go Gators, and I wanted to work in video games like most college kids did. And the problem with that was I was failing Calculus 2. And so my life as a software engineer was quickly fading. But then I ran into somebody in the game industry who was at that point the senior producer at Star Wars Galaxies, if anybody remembers that game.
Oh, hell yes.
Anyway, John told me, hey, the game industry doesn't really need more people who can program. It needs people who know business. And I said, that's something I could do. So I set off on a merry quest to learn as much as I could about the business side of games. And I stumbled into the Dexterity forums, which we were just mentioning, which would later become the Indie Game forums, or I don't even remember exactly what the name was, if that's correct. But it was sort of a congregation place for indie game developers. And the thing I noticed is there were a lot of people there talking about making games, but very few people talking about selling them. And so I started making some posts and asking people if they needed help with marketing. I made $25 my first month of posting there. I charged somebody $25 to write some press releases and put together, I started putting together a press list of people myself, which was much easier back then than it is now. Maybe we'll talk about that. That was 2003. And the rest, as they say, is history. From there, I started doing more and more work with indies. I founded, I established an actual business, a business name, VGSmart. I went on to be the marketing guy behind a lot of, I would say, well-known indie games over the years, including some publishers and some other folks. Clay Entertainment, their very first game. I worked with Wargaming.net when they were still an indie studio before they made World of Tanks. There was a game called Massive Assault I worked on, Spiderweb Software, all those old school CRPGs from Jeff Vogel, and well-known indie titles, To the Moon, Guns of Icarus. I worked on the RPG Maker engine, RPG Maker XP and Ace. And then throughout those years of doing that, I also sort of ended up in a bunch of different weird jobs as doing marketing. I worked with Arcadetown, who did casual game publishing from 2006 to 2013, technically. And as well as in 2016, I took a job with Antlion Audio to be their marketing director and bring this guy, the Mod Mic, into the world. As you're hearing it now, it's a microphone you can attach to any pair of headphones, so you can turn these nice R70Xs into the ultimate gaming headset. And I stumbled into that job because I wanted a product like that, couldn't find one, and then accidentally stumbled into a job posting for Antlion Audio looking for somebody to do marketing because they were having trouble finding their audience. And I would say I've been greatly successful in bringing the Mod Mic to the world since 2016. So that's the brief career trajectory.
There's always a brief career trajectory. So I actually have ties to Star Wars Galaxies as well. When I was in college, before Star Wars Galaxies, he had a mud called Legend Mud, and I played that damn game like
Coster,
religiously.
right, Raph?
Yes. And I actually ran into him at a Casual Connect many years later. And I told him, I was like, hey, look, we haven't met yet, but we haven't met in person. But way back in the day, I played Legend Mud. It's one of the reasons I got into the industry. And he got all excited. And he's like, do you remember your character? And I'm like, good God, Raph, I'm doing good to remember what I had for breakfast yesterday morning. Don't remotely ask me what character I ran back in the day on that thing. So you've covered a good bit. And I think Arcadetown was where you and I first met, because we were doing our own. I think at that point we had transferred the agency into a publishing arm, and that was one of the distribution points that we had was, Arcadetown. And that's one of the things that I always, at least that time period is one of the things that I always look at when, people start ranting and raving about Steam's 30%, is the fact that, back then you had companies like Big Fish that were taking 80%. And
That's right.
It was absolutely.
We even knew somebody who was taking, they were taking 86%, 84%.
Holy shit.
Right. A developer got 16% of the revenue. But it's also important to look at the context of that, right? So one of the clients I had in the past, Amaranth Games, they made the games Avion and several others, a couple hidden object games. We took, it's essentially a completely separate audience than the indie game scene, right? It was at that time, at least. So we took like somebody who was selling on Steam and they were making some money, or actually maybe not even on Steam, maybe it was direct still at that time. It doesn't matter. But they were selling, their RPG, and we took it to Big Fish Games and reached a completely new audience that we hadn't before. And Amanda won't mind. We did over 3 million in gross sales on Steam on Big Fish alone. With the RPG made an RPG maker.
It was absolutely a case of, they talk in the movie industry now about, all these movies are made with China in mind because China's such a big market. And if you miss out on China, you're basically screwed. Big Fish was China, but they were in Seattle. It's like, if you were doing a game for this audience and you didn't get a good launch on Big Fish, you were screwed. Now, if you even got a mediocre launch, I mean, you could take a $50,000 hidden object game and make millions off of it just because of the reach that they had. But there were, I think we had 20 different sites that we would, publish on. And even to this day, aside from mobile, those games still don't do well on Steam. I'm pretty sure Big Fish is still around, but they're a distant shadow of what they were.
Yeah, it's funny to think back to the insane parties they'd throw because they were just swimming in money. Like it was, I mean, for all my clients getting their, 6-figure checks from them, which is nothing to sneeze at. Big Fish was getting 7-8-figure checks, right?
Yes. Like, absolutely. So, I mean, it's one of those things that, we've seen that kind of cycle. Everybody was doing direct and retail. And then, Steam came along and, some of the digital distribution stuff. And then everybody went to that. And now a lot of those digital distribution network, I mean, just pages and stores and everything have absolutely congealed back into one, and with iOS. And we're seeing that cycle go all over again because go ahead. And the dog is looking at me like she wants to go outside. I'm going to set this up and then I'm going to let you roll with it. You were talking right before we went live about the, the Dexterity Era, when everybody was all the publishers were making their own launchers and things like that.
Well,
go into that for a second while I let the dog out. And
yeah, you go let the dog out. I'll take care of this, the community.
All right.
Well, so what I was talking about actually was at the very beginning when I started, not the beginning of the game industry by any leap, was what I like to call the Dexterity Era for indie games, which was when everyone had their own every developer had their own website, and that's how you made money, is you sold your game directly. Oftentimes with a physical CD, like somebody would buy a product, you would literally burn the CD at home for a lot of the smaller indies, and pack it up yourself and mail it. And that's the way we did business. You know, the big win for me on the marketing side is getting an indie game onto the PC Gamer CD, which is still a thing then, and PC Gamer was still a thing then. So this was like a real early. This is 2003, 2004, 2005, somewhere in there. And Dexterity was the name of the forum that every indie game developer used. So what Jay and I were just talking about, though, is really that there's these cycles of basically large amounts of money that come into the indie game world. And this has nothing to do with the big publishers and the way that big publishers make money. It's all about, you know, single-man studios. How do you make money as a single-man studio? How do you make money as a 5-man studio? That was the tiniest of tiny golden ages, right? The plus side was that you could make $20 on any game, regardless of how big or small it was. And some of these games could fit on a floppy disk, right? And you'd still sell it for $20, and everybody did. That was a brief glimmer of a golden age. And then Steam came along, and Steam had its curated system. And back during the curated system before Greenlight, you had to actually pitch your game to Steam like they were a publisher. And that was another golden age, right? Another golden opportunity. And in order to get your game onto Steam in that time, you either had to get basically lucky or know somebody, which was a great time for me because I knew somebody, right? So I would take games up to Seattle, and I would say, "Hey, everybody, I've got this cool game. You know, please take a look at it." And voila. To put that into context, a game that essentially would be a zero sales game today was basically guaranteed to make about 50 grand. And a game that was decent was guaranteed to make 6 or 7 figures. It was just money. You were just printing money as indie developers. And then Greenlight came out, and you know there's a big rush of indie developers to the platform, which is continuing on today. And that I'm not saying you can't make money as an indie developer on Steam. Far from it, but I don't remember what the average number is. But on average, if you take every single Steam launch and average out the sales of indie games, it's actually laughably small, right? The hits win. I always liked the late Total Biscuit. He used to use the term "good isn't good enough." You know, you can't just have a good game; you have to have a great game on Steam now, and that didn't used to be the case, which is hilarious. And there will be, as we move forward, more and more opportunities like this that roll around. We just sort of passed one, which was when it was Unreal and Microsoft and Google Stadia were all just bidding like crazy to buy up rights, even temporary rights, 6 months rights, to indie games for their platform. I'm not going to name names, but I know multiple developers who were cut 6-figure checks for their games before they launched, and all they had to do was give exclusivity for half a year, and then they were free to sell it on other platforms. For a medium to large size studio, that is an okay deal, but for a small studio, that's bonkers. Like you didn't even finish the product practically, and you're already in the black. And there will be, as you go forward, that well may have dried up quite a bit now, but as we go forward, there's going to be another opportunity, and your goal as indie developers is to keep your eyes open for those moments and really capitalize on them. See them for what they are and capitalize. And sometimes they happen real fast. Sometimes they don't, though. I think Steam, when it launched, kind of took everybody by surprise on how successful it was. Maybe not. Maybe somebody out there was more clever than I was. Casual games are the same way too, by the way. Casual games is another era where you could just, as Jay was saying, I know people who spent 50 grand to make a hidden object game and walked away with $1 million+. Like it was, and it took them like 3 months to make these games, right? It was insanity. And a lot of that
much easier before people started demanding quality.
Yeah. A lot of that had to do with a lot of it had to do with the price they used to charge too, right? In the beginning, we always said that at Arcadetown. My favorite anecdote from Arcadetown is this: the game publisher won't be happy until we're paying the players to play our games. The price of casual games used to be $20, just like the indie games, $20 per game, and then there was the subscription model, and eventually it dropped to I don't know, $2. iOS $1. That's
but we're there now because we have play to earn. So technically,
yeah,
that is actually happening.
The prediction was true.
Yes, that was.
But again, the point was that there's all these moments throughout history so far, and in the future there will be moments in which you'll see an opportunity, and you must seize upon it if you want to make that quick, easy money, so to speak. I was saying just before that we started here, I think the next one is likely to be something related to AR, probably not VR, but AR, as we see more adaptation and adoption of glasses and other devices. Now, I could be totally wrong here. This idea could flop, but with Apple, making products now in this space and others, it's pretty likely that they're going to be real starved for content, right? And they can't launch these products without content, and they're going to realize that. And then Facebook and Apple and probably Microsoft and whoever else is going to get involved in this, they're going to open their wallets, right? And the easiest thing for them to do is pick up indie products because they're cheap, they're fast, and they're low risk for them. But for you guys, potentially a big deal.
So, and my brain just shut down. AR has been around for 15 years.
Yeah.
And nobody gave a shit until Pokemon Go came out. And now we're back in are people really giving a shit again? Why do you feel that that's going to be the next big space?
Well, I've got a couple of thoughts about that. First, you could say technically, hey, VR's been around a while. Remember the Virtual Boy? And we can go.
No. You can't count that one. No, that's
the same shape. My point is that, just because the technology's been around a while doesn't mean the world was ready for it or the technology was ready for the world. And I think that's the big difference between AR now and AR then. Even Pokemon Go it's not really AR. Not really. What we're talking about is the ability to really dig deep. And some of it is pretty big brothery, but the ability to have your glasses tell you the guy you're looking at when you're at an event, right? So let's say we're at PAX West and I walk up to Jay and I'm like, shit, who is this guy? And my glasses will be like, hey, that's Jay Powell. those kinds of useful things. And it's not hard, right? It's not hard to imagine, right? You get a facial recognition going and blam, it'll say that's who this is. And you don't have to have that awkward, hey, you, good to see you again. How have you been?
But I'm really good at that awkward part because I never remember anybody. If it's not for name tags at conferences, 9 times out of 10, I'm screwed.
Yeah, but now you don't have to awkwardly stare at somebody's chest, oftentimes a woman's chest, in order to figure out what their name is and then get a slap in the face. So
yes,
there are advantages as well.
Definitely the bad side of that.
Sometimes a man's chest and get a slap in the face too. Equal opportunity.
So the next question I had was, do you think that that golden age for streaming exclusivity is really at an end? Because I think we're going to continue to see it for a little bit.
No, I don't think it's at an end. In the same way, I don't think Steam is at an end, right? Just because the golden age is drying up or has dried up doesn't mean that the opportunity is lost, right? It's the easy opportunity that's lost. I don't know the exact number of titles that Unreal threw money at, but it was a lot, and that number is decreasing year over year now, right? They're cutting that program back, and same for Microsoft, right? When one starts cutting back, the other can start cutting back. So the opportunities are decreasing.
Google has definitely cut back on Stadia, but I mean I think a lot of us know. I know I was raising eyebrows about that when they announced it at GDC that year. That was half caught coming out of the gate. and everybody was worried that Google's not going to stand by this because they have a track record of like dropping stuff, and then sure as hell, that's what happened. But then you've got to ask yourself, did that happen naturally because that's what Google has a tendency to do, or did that happen because people assumed that was going to happen, they didn't support it, and then sure as shit, it made itself. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There are less of those companies going out there and doing this thing, but I think there's still very much, especially now that Netflix has actually come in and we have the Netflix of games, which is literally Netflix.
What a shock.
Between that and Xbox Game Pass, Sony's finally decided to do something similar. GeForce Now, there's plenty of these things that are still out there, but that's one of the things that we always have to talk to developers about. It's like they don't just randomly happen. I mean, sure, if your game goes completely viral this week on Steam Next Fest, somebody from Microsoft may reach out to you. But you have to go out and be looking for this stuff and be talking to people about it.
Or hire somebody who knows somebody. Maybe a Jay out there, maybe the future version of me, me in the past. This is a thing that I would help a lot of my clients with. So find somebody. It's a lot easier than making the contacts yourself, I'll say that. But if you're at those events, if we ever get back to real life events, that's where these deals happen. That's where the magic is. And that's the real value of going to PAX or GDC or E3. It's not the publicity you're going to get from your game. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, get that publicity that you need. But it's the people you meet.
It's the networking.
Yeah. My favorite, most recently, just before the end of times, I was at PAX East, and I had a great long chat, and it was on the verge of making an awesome deal with somebody from Microsoft. Unfortunately, that person from Microsoft was the person in charge of Mixer.
Ooh.
And they had no idea that they were about to be canned, like, as far as I know. Like, it just blindsided basically everybody at Mixer that Microsoft killed that project. At least, again, that's how I understood it. But yeah, they were like super excited to work with Antlion Audio, and we're like, we're talking about doing all kinds of things, and then, but that's the point, is you never know who you're going to meet, and you have to get yourself out there and meet those people, and that's what, like Hamilton says, be in the room where it happens.
All right, and so Jim on Facebook just brought up a really good point. Talking about Oculus's funding for projects on their platform. They'll hook you up with hardware and things like that. That is one of the areas that has grown in the last 5 years, and even more so over the last 2 years with the pandemic and the fact that we couldn't go to all these conferences. Is there are a lot more of the untraditional funding sources that are going out there. You've got mega grants, you've got there are multiple grants out there for especially minorities and people who are underrepresented. And next week, I think I'm one of the final bosses, one of the judges for the AT&T Unlock thing, and we're going to be giving a women-led team in the US $100,000 for their project, which is, I was stressed last year when we gave somebody $50,000, and now they're going to up and double it, and we're doing it more. There are a lot more options like that out there, but it's a matter of you have to go find them.
I think that is potentially the start of another one of these golden age moments for indie developers to be looking for, that flexibility, this idea that you can find essentially, I wouldn't call it free funding. There's some sort of expectations usually attached to these things. Facebook's not giving this guy grant money in order to make his game. He's giving him grant money to make his game for Oculus, right? Not maybe not.
Even those exclusivity periods aren't nearly as bad as they used to be.
That's right. Yeah, in the old days, you might have exclusivity in perpetuity, right?
Yes.
This is a game for PlayStation, and you will never put it anywhere else.
Everybody else can eat shit and die. But now
another good golden age. Actually, I just thought of it. Xbox Live Arcade. was another huge.
Oh my
moment.
God, yes. I had the first Sudoku game published on Xbox Live Arcade, and it did just as well as you would expect a Sudoku game on a console to do. So
I worked with Outpost Koloki X, which was a launch title, and it did gangbusters. So
Jim actually just commented, no exclusive terms.
Oh, all right then. What I meant was not that there was exclusivity. It's that they're giving you the money with the expectation of getting a game they can use in their store, right? Like, it's nowhere near as binding as things used to be, but sort of, that's the string, as it were. Is obviously they're not giving you the money to make a game for desktop PC, although it might be cross-platform. They're going to get something out of it.
All right, so
and I think that might be a good example of an upcoming golden age moment. As these things, I think we are not on the downward trend for these kinds of grant opportunities or financing opportunities where you can get cash or equipment early, ideally cash, and use that to fund the game. I think that would be a pretty reasonable thing, but I also not sure that we're going to see 7-figure checks cut anytime soon for indie developers.
Well, it's like it's always been. There's not going to be until somebody shows them a game and Facebook or whoever it is just goes, oh my God, we have to have this and it's going to be huge. As well as I do, all these decisions are made on a spreadsheet. So if they put the numbers in the spreadsheet and they're like, oh my God, that game will sell 2 million units on an Oculus, yeah, they'll pay for it. But
it always comes down to having somebody break things wide open. That's absolutely
Yep.
true. And to some extent, VR has never had that, other than you can look at Beat Saber and you can look at my favorite game, Thrill the Fight. The only 2 games on VR that I like so far still. And
well, we
sorry
had
to any other VR developers out there. I probably haven't played your game, but
VR had a very brief golden age moment, and by brief I mean like 3 months, where when the pandemic hit and Half-Life Alyx came out, we had multiple publishers come to us who never cared one iota about VR, and they were like, what do you have in VR? And at the time we only had like 1 game, and I was like, I can find you more, and we did. But by the time we found new titles, the interest was already gone. I mean, it was literally a very brief, for a period of 3 or 4 months right at the beginning of the pandemic, publishers were chunking a ton of money into VR, and then it just kind of died off.
VR finds itself in a pretty strange place, and as far as like gaming history goes of platforms, I would say it's pretty unique, in fact, in that usually a platform either fails immediately, as we saw with Google Glass or any number of other things, various consoles throughout the years, or it succeeds. Very rarely do we find one in the position of like intermediate failure. And that's where VR is right now. It's not, for a game developer, it's not a successful platform, right? There's a handful of successful games, but people keep making content for it because they believe in the idea of the platform, that there's going to be something there someday. So
all word of mouth, and we see that on VR, because we get questions in the Discord quite frequently. It's like, so I've got a VR game, what do I do? And I agree with you. Generally, when we see a fad die out or it's on its last legs, developers stop making games for it. They go to something else. We haven't seen that with VR. Developers are still churning out games. It's just there aren't a lot of publishers looking to support it. So developers are on their own to do a lot of the marketing. And as a result, like Jim said, a lot of the marketing for these things comes out of word of mouth, So it's it's like, we don't want it to die. We're going to keep trying this until, something breaks and something happens. And I would love to say that, one of the Oculus's, headsets is going to be that watershed moment, but not until they get rid of that mandatory Facebook integration. that's exactly the part that
my problem with it is bulk, comfort, ease of use. It's all Facebook integration, whatever. Like, the platforms have been forcing us onto their platforms since the dawn of platforms. I'm not concerned about that. I mean, I don't like it, but that doesn't, as a business, it doesn't bother me. No, my problem is the usability of a VR headset, even the Quest 2, which is honestly the best so far as like just put it on and go. We still got a ways to go with it. But yeah, I think as developers, we really believe in it, right? That we're going to see something with VR. And as a result, I think we will eventually find that. And I don't know if it's going to be Facebook and Quest or some other company, Valve or somebody else entirely. That gets us there, but it's just got to get slimmer. It's just got to get easier, and that's why at the start I was talking about AR as an alternative, right? Where if we start seeing real money come into AR hardware, we will see money flow into AR developers, and it may be the same thing that we saw in the past, where we have a flash in the pan moment of just there's money now, and tomorrow there's no money. Or it could be like the VR or maybe even Steam experience, where we see year after year just sort of steady incremental growth. It's impossible to say, but as developers, to ignore it would be at your own peril.
All right, so I'm going to ask the question that's probably going to start a shitstorm, but this is what I do, and sometimes I enjoy shitstorms. So, what do you think about Web3 being that next watershed moment? Because I can tell you there's a ton of money getting thrown into it.
Oh, here comes the shitstorm. No,
yes.
I think first of all, I want to say that I'm using AR and Web3 sort of interchangeably, right? I think one cannot exist without the other.
See, I wasn't aware of that. I thought you were still talking about just normal AR.
No, I'm not talking about like holding your phone up and.
Well, that's what AR means to me.
No, my friend. We're talking about integrated web content in the real world it's got to be through some sort of optical input, though. So usually people think about glasses. I mean, in theory, someday maybe contacts or similar things. Who knows? Oh yeah, why not, right?
Because I got tired of wearing contacts. That's
yeah, me too.
I don't really want to go back to that.
I got too old, and I don't care. I don't care anymore if I'm more beautiful without my glasses. It's more comfortable to wear glasses.
No, we're older. We have the gray hair and the glasses. That means we're smarter, Joe. That's
right.
Yeah. See, that's my story.
So what I'm saying is, this is the future money pit or money pile, depending on how you want to look at it. Is this idea of integrating Web3 into our lives, right? Which is, again, very dystopic in a lot of people's minds, and very much could be in reality. But who cares if you can make a cool AR game where you can make a couple $1 million and walk away? So let the dystopia come for those developers who have no conscience or soul.
This it is. It's like I said right before we got started. Our last live podcast was on crypto and Web3, and we went for like 2 hours because everybody was just absolutely. It is one of those things right now where we're seeing a bunch of money. We've got companies that are like, we're paying up to $2 million to get games, even games that exist right now, moved over to the platform. But yeah, it's also like easily the most divisive thing I've seen in years in the industry.
Yeah, the key there will be getting those people with those wallets, getting them to understand that you can't just move a game over to AR Web3, right? You'll end up with the VR. What was it? The Oblivion or whatever. I'm too old. What's the Bethesda game for VR? Whatever it was, the stupid one, the dragons.
Skyrim.
Yeah, yes. Thank you. My brain just turned off there. Yeah, you end up with Skyrim VR, which is like, not good. It's not good, right?
But this is the way that we always see this stuff happening. They haven't had time to develop a proper game from scratch for the platform yet, and so the first step is always, okay, we've got this new tech. we're going to pay people to integrate it. It's very similar to stuff that we see on hardware with, like Facebook funds and things like that. It's, hey, we realized, and this is what I tell our clients, we have a lot of tech companies that come to us, and because they know we have deep reach in the industry and we know all these publishers and developers, and they're like, will you help us get our stuff in front of all these people? And I tell them point blank, the easiest way to do that is just simply pay the developers. That's because everybody's getting hit with some kind of integration that they want every single week. It's a matter of, how are you going to make it stand out? All right, so let's talk about hardware and marketing and opportunities, because that's one of the things that we obviously wanted to hit on. One, everybody always likes free stuff, but two, what are, especially with you being with Antlion now, but you've been doing this for a very long time anyway, how can developers, especially indie developers, make the most of opportunities with hardware companies in general?
So I think this is going to be the most valuable takeaway from this whole thing. So congratulations, you just sat through 36 minutes of just us BSing. The most valuable thing.
They're used to this podcast. They're 90% of it is BSing, so it's all good.
The most valuable takeaway here is that hardware companies, Antlion Audio included, we are always looking for developers to reach out to us who are interested in our products for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's, hey, I want to do streaming and I need a better microphone. We want to be involved with game developers because, one, it lends us legitimacy. Two, it's good PR. Three, it's just an opportunity for us to get our name out there again, right? And so at the cost of hardware, which of course for us is at essentially manufacturing cost, we can get you gear, we can use our existing platform to promote your game, your product, whatever it is. And usually there's very few strings attached to it. Like, if a developer reaches out to me and says, hey, I want a mod mic wireless. Woo, look at that. I want a mod mic wireless for my stream. I'm going to be doing dev streams, and here's my game. I'll say, yeah, send me a copy of your game, and I'll send you a microphone. And if you could, give us a shout out on your stream. That's it. That's all there is to it. Like, bam, deal done. And as that relationship can progress, there might be more and more things we can do together, all the way up to helping you get your game out to the public. We have a pretty big newsletter, and we're a small company, right? You make a deal with Logitech and somebody, and you could really reach a lot of people. And so I think even back when I was doing PR, never considered this angle. I never thought to myself, who I should be sending PR emails to? Hardware companies, but it pretty much makes sense for any hardware company, even tangentially connected to the gaming space, right? We want to reach gamers. So how do we do that? One of the best ways is, of course, through game developers. It's pretty obvious when you stop and think about it. But yeah, I never did that basically when I was in PR for games, and it was a missed opportunity.
I remember one of the very first E3s I went to, which was actually in Atlanta, to say how old I am. Jesus. We got this letter back when, because people used to have to send shit by letter. We got a letter from Logitech, and they're like, so you're going to be, having a booth at E3, which we didn't have a booth. We just had a meeting space in Kintia Hall. Do you need any hardware? And we thought it was a joke, so we checked off like literally everything on the on the thing, and like 3 of them each. And then sure as shit, when we got there was a gigantic box of gear waiting on us in our booth, and all they asked was that we put a little tab up next to the PCs that we had that said powered by Logitech or whatever it was. And it is one of those things that, again, a lot of developers don't think about. One of the most successful games I have ever worked on was like an adventure game in Flash, not like Flash like we have now, but like the fancy version of Flash that we used to put on discs and sell to people. And because it was like the PC Gamer disc you talked about, It was a publisher who only operated in Spain, and they had a cover mount distribution agreement with one of the biggest companies one of the biggest newspapers in Spain. I think we did over 1 million units there. Now, obviously, we weren't selling it for, $30. We only got like a little bit for each one, but we moved a load of units, and it's because, of these hardware or OEM or cover mount or whatever you want to say, opportunities that are out there that a lot of developers don't think about in terms of this is a way that we can, raise a little bit more money and augment what we're doing.
Yeah, I had a similar experience at E3. I was there for Battle Over Britain 2, and we also just had a meeting room. And I realized after we set up that we didn't have a joystick. So I just walked over to SciTech and I was like, can I get a joystick for our demos? And they're like, please take it. Make people use our product, because we got, tons of press rolling through there. And yeah, obviously they want people touching their product. It just didn't occur. Like, I walked up all nervous thinking like I was going to have to talk them into it. It was like,
you feel like that mooch that's like, I'm just here for free shit. That's the only reason I'm here. It's like, no, we actually kind of need one.
I think that's also a really common, especially when you're not in the marketing realm for a long time. If you're new to it, you feel really nervous asking people for things. You and I, Jay, have long past that point, but you might
you get over that at some point. Yes.
Asking people for stuff makes people nervous, and as indie developers who have not spent 20 years doing PR work, know that's normal. Know that's a normal reaction when you're new to this, and get over it. Just ask people for shit.
One of the first things that I tell anybody when I'm giving presentations or just talking about business in general is the worst they can say is no. Whether you're sending them your game to look at, or you're asking for hardware, or you're talking to a streamer, the worst they can say is no. And 9 times out of 10 in today's world, they're just going to ghost you anyway. So you don't even have to hear the word no.
Yeah, I'm actually happy when somebody says no to me, because it means that I know they read the email at least.
Yeah. Or they at least opened it. A lot of them, they don't necessarily always read it.
I'll take a hard no over a well, I'll send this person another email next week.
Yeah. All right, so Kelly Jumio, and God, I probably crucified that name, but we're going to go with it anyway, has a good point. A lot of these opportunities are hard to get. So let's talk about making things like this more accessible. Obviously you're here, everybody, Joe's on the Discord, you can go and ping him and ask him for mics and cameras and, that poster behind him of the Dalek and whatever else that
I'm not sending. I got that. I was in London. I had to go all the way to London for that poster.
we can't get there now, so you can't have that yet. But how as an indie dev, how do you find these opportunities?
That's a great question. And to some degree, I don't know the answer, because again, as I just said, when I was doing PR, I never thought of it. I only thought of it after I joined the hardware world and started looking at it from the opposite angle. But I would say Discord is actually a good place to start. So pretty much every company has a Discord, and there you can find usually a community manager, and that community manager will have to kick it up the chain to the next person, et cetera, et cetera. If you're real lucky, or real clever, you can find certain places like indiegame.business or like the Build a PC Reddit Discord. I've got a couple on my list here. I'm just sort of scrolling through them while I'm talking. Places where you can actually see a list of people on the right-hand side there that show like, hey, this is an industry person for this company. Aha! Then you say, that is the guy I will send a message to and ask, hey, I'm this guy, this developer with this game, and I need this piece of hardware, and I'd like to talk about doing some co-marketing opportunities. And they'll, they may or may not be the right person, but generally speaking, they'll be professional enough to kick it up. That's right. Yes. If you're smart, you're in any game business. If they're not there, they're probably not worth talking to.
I wouldn't say that. There's tons of places that I did notice that we're almost at 4,000 people in the Discord now, and I was just like, oh my god. All right, so I will add to that. There is a way to go and do this. It requires a lot of, as we like to say, grunt work. Getting well, we don't really get dirty in this industry. You're not out in the mud digging for something.
I have no calluses.
Yes, exactly. As my 10-year-old says, Dad, I don't know why you're tired from work. All you do is push buttons all day. It's like, yes, that's exactly what I do all day. It takes a little bit of research, but going and the Discord route, and I still say Discord is like one of the most underutilized business tools that we have in the industry right now because of basically the access that you can get to so many different people. But it's a matter of going and you can start on Twitter, you can start on Google, research and find all of these companies that do hardware, and there are a lot of them, and some of them are owned by others, so it gets a little confusing here and there. But that's exactly what we started doing years ago. Another thing is go on Twitch and YouTube and look. Twitch is very easy because everybody has that panel underneath their stream that says, here are all my sponsors. If they're sponsoring that person, they're sponsoring other people. So, that's another good place to go and find, especially like hardware sponsors and things like that.
Two additional notes to that.
What's that?
Two additional notes to that. One, LinkedIn. You missed LinkedIn of all things.
I know, but I get a little tired of constantly harping about LinkedIn when everybody looks at me.
Well, all right. Well, I'll harp it for you. Two, not only do you know they're sponsored, but it's not so unusual to reach out to the content creator, especially if they're smaller, and ask them for an introduction to the person you need to talk to. Like, content creators will help game developers, and they don't ask anything for it. They're mostly nice people. So if you run into somebody, they've got, I don't know, whatever, 100, 200 concurrent people and are sponsored by Antlion Audio, and you send them a message, hey, I'm a developer of this game, and I was hoping, one, you could review my game, but two, could you give me an intro to the guy at Antlion Audio? They'll be like, sure. Like, it's that simple. It's a networking, on the base scale, and it is grunt work, though. It is a lot of legwork. It is going to a lot of web pages and opening a lot of tabs and sending a lot of messages. So that is the life of doing PR for games, and it's only gotten worse as we've progressed through the years, right? In the old days, we had like 6, 7 really important people to talk to. Like, that was it. Like, now, when I'm doing a PR campaign for something, I am sending tens of thousands of individual emails. If a streamer has 25 people, it's just for software more than hardware. The streamer's got 25 people watching their stream. I want them playing my game. Like, hardware, I have to go a little higher because it actually cost me something to send them the product. But
Junie's calling me out because she and I had the conversation the other day about how difficult it is to find sponsors for IGB and all this stuff, and it is the grunt work, and we do have that list of companies that we know are possible, but it's also having the time to do it. And that's the biggest problem over here right now. It's like, IGB is like an offshoot of, it was actually literally
it's not
my hobby.
Bills.
And
the Antlion Audio IGB sponsorship is not gonna bring home the bacon.
Well, I mean, but even so, I mean, there are things that, and yes, you and I are going to talk after the show about all of this, but for IGB, there's obviously the exposure route. We want to let more developers know what we're doing. But to be blunt, this has grown beyond anything that I had imagined, and we need to actually hire people. And so that's where the sponsors come in. And it is absolutely just it's a lot of work to go out and find them.
Speaking of which, Antlion Audio, we're hiring marketing staff. I haven't made the job posting yet, so if you want to get in before anybody else, drop me a DM if you've got a couple years experience doing marketing, PR. We need you.
I was going to say, how many levels of experience? All right, is this something that you've got coming straight out of
If
the
you're
industry?
super passionate, have no experience, that's possible. Ideally, a couple years experience. You've written some press releases and sent emails to influencers.
I've written press releases. I mean, that doesn't mean they're good. It just means.
Don't worry, I'll be the judge of that. You send me what you wrote, and I'll tell you whether or not they're good.
All right, we have a very good question in chat. Could you pull? Yes. So, how do you write so many emails? I take hours to send one. I'm going to kick this to you, Joe. You're right. When you've got like all these things to get out there, how do you do it how do you strike that balance between I have to send this to 10,000 people and I can't make it look like I just form emailed all this shit?
So here's how I do it, Calix. First, you can't take hours sending an email. Usually my method is this. I have what is essentially a copy paste email, right? That has the key things I need to get across. And I write it in what I consider a pretty organic way. That's my approach. So it's not like a corporate email. It's like, hey, we got this cool thing coming out. Here's a picture of it. Here's what it does. Yada, yada, yada. Then at the very top of that, I write about 3 or 4 sentences specifically to somebody and I hit send. And that's how it works. So I use, oh man, what is the name? I'll have to open it up while I'm talking, and hopefully I can do so. Nope, I can't click and talk at the same time. I just learned. I use a tool called Mail Merge with Attachments. That's why it's such a generic name, which is essentially a spreadsheet tool. And what that can allow you to do is basically send things from your email as if you'd sent them by writing out, pressing the send button. So one column is basically the stuff that's going to go at the top of the email, and then there's basically a Gmail draft that it pulls the rest of the stuff from. And then by doing that, and I hit the button, it just sends them one after the other. So all I have to do is write 3 sentences per person. Hey Jay, how are your kids doing? It's been a while since we've talked. I've got this cool product. Come check it out. Bam, it's now a personal email. And yes, Jay's going to know that the bottom of it is copy paste, but what does he care? I've at least taken the time to say, hey, how are your kids?
Yes, you nailed it. That's it. It's like, I don't get angry when I get cold emails that are obviously form emails from people. I get angry when I get cold emails from people that obviously don't know the first damn thing about what we're doing. And, I get those at conferences all the time. It's like, hey, we're working in such and such a studio. What sort of outsourcing 3D art assets do you need? And I'm like, We're a consulting firm. We don't need any 3D art assets. But
yeah, I get a lot of, hey, I love your headphones. We don't make headphones.
We make attachments.
That's a big strike right there.
Yes. It is always, you can't effectively, do marketing and business in this industry without having a library of templates that you use. And so that's the other part, that goes along with everything. It's like, don't ever delete content that you made. If you sat down and spent an hour to making, like Joe said, the body of that email draft, save that somewhere, so you don't have to go back and do it all over again later.
Yeah, you don't want to see my Gmail drafts folder. It is a giant mess.
Ours are all stored on our CRM. There's a whole section for like email.
You're way more organized than me.
Which is the other thing that we could talk about in this industry, about how unorganized the majority of us actually are, that do this for a living. But Game Dev says, so basically it's always cold shot emails. Yes. A lot of times, most of the time,
unless
really
I am
is.
sending an email to what I consider a super major, if I'm sending an email to Ninja, I'll write something specifically for him. If I'm sending an email to somebody truly massive, then I'll take extra time. I don't think I'll take an hour, but I'll take 15 minutes, 10 minutes if they are of that level of importance. But even people of sort of medium size, if they got 500,000 YouTube subscribers, that's medium size, right? To me. Yeah, they're getting the cold email with a warm intro.
Now, here's the second part of that equation. You can't ever send that cold email and then like never talk to them again. You know, we talk to, you know, our clients that a lot of times it's the second and the third follow-up that people actually see, oh, okay, you're like legitimate and you actually are interested in working with us. So yes, you are going to batch send a whole bunch of emails, but it's very important that you follow up with those as well, and, you know, establish that legitimacy and tell people like, hey, a lot of times just simply remind them. It could have been sitting in their inbox for, you know, a week. You absolutely never know. So
yep, there's basically a workflow that happens when you're sending these cold emails. So first there's the initial email, and that goes out to everybody. Obviously, everybody who says yes to whatever it is I'm asking them to do, they go into a new bucket of people. Everybody who says no go into a new bucket. But that's, again, much more rare than option 3, which is they don't say anything. In which case, they just get another email a week later. That's my method. Sometimes it's 2 weeks, depending on what's going on. But usually a week or so is my initial email, follow-up email, 1 week later. And then I take a 2 or 3 week break and send the third email. If they have not responded by 3 emails, I usually drop them unless they are somebody that I think really is the right fit for whatever it is I'm doing. Like, there's no reason they wouldn't have gotten back to me. You know, if we're making a new microphone and it's, you know, let's say Podcastage, a great microphone resource, and Andrew over there has not replied to me, then I would be like, all right, like I need to like sit down and formally write something and reach out to him in another way, maybe, right? Maybe not email. Maybe I go find him on Discord and hit him up there. So that's my sort of waterfall methodology, I guess.
all right, so can you track whether or not they've opened that email?
Tracking opens is possible, but a lot of programs block it. It's not reliable is my problem with tracking.
It's not reliable, but for what it does, it's helpful, because we do the same thing. And, you know, I'm going to call out Jennifer because she's just popped up and made a comment. If you want to know anything about how to send a shitload of emails and people to respond to them, all of those from the Powell group come from Jennifer, and she is a goddess at it. You know, she's the one that handles all of this and makes sure that we don't sound like idiots coming out one day at a time. But that's one of the things that our CRM does. And so it's like when you send those three emails to Andrew and he hasn't responded, if we see people who haven't responded to 3 emails, but they've opened one of those emails 21 times, and it's like, okay, something is going on there. And if it's nothing, then maybe the email's bad, or maybe you got the wrong person, or it's going to the spam filter, or, you know, something along those lines. So that tracking mechanism, it's not flawless, but it's helpful. Yeah.
It feels like Russian roulette. Another somebody comments. It does. It's a lot less dangerous.
Oh, it's the level of creepy, you know, that bar keeps changing. So Calix says, somebody sent me a second email, says, thanks for opening my last email. And even though they didn't reply, and it felt super creepy, that's because I'm willing to bet you that person was using one of the automated tools that are out there on the internet, and there's plenty of them. So and we used to use one of these, we don't use it anymore. It will send an email, and then that system knows whether it was opened or not, and then it falls into a different little workflow path, and it will automatically send another one later, or it will send you a notification that says the person didn't respond or whatever. But those tools are actually far more common than you think, but they're not typically.
We use a similar tool for if you add an item to a cart on our site and don't check out, you'll get an email from us.
Yeah,
badgering you to buy our stuff.
Why did you leave? You left shit in your
Do you
cart.
not love me?
Yes,
it says.
I love, you know, getting those emails. It's like, you left something in your cart, and I'm like, yeah, I know. I have ADD. Leave me alone, okay? I'll get back to it.
We will never leave you alone. You're on the list now.
Oh, all right. We got one from, you know, the Discord, and we're at our hour mark, so we're probably going to wrap this up fairly shortly. But if you have questions about marketing or hardware or any of this sort of stuff, drop them in chat wherever you're watching, or if you're on the Discord, drop in the podcast questions. Joe will be happy to answer all of this for you. So the question is, how would you go about promoting a crowdfunding campaign? Like, what would your bucket list be, when you set it up?
Oh boy. It has been, so caveat, it has been a long time since I've done a crowdfunding campaign. The last one I did was for Move Love, but I will say we raised like $2 million, so pretty successful.
That works.
So how would you go about it? Boy. In the shortest way I could answer this is a lot of the work is in the setup, right? Getting the right assets together, getting the right video together. You need to tell a really compelling story in crowdfunding, right? Move Love, I cheated because it's a well-known product. It's a well-known visual novel in Japan. So I had a really unfair advantage, not only because people already knew it, but also because we already had a lot of assets. So first things first, before you even do any marketing or any PR, is the marketing side that everybody really never talks about, which is just making stuff and making it look good. The second step of that, of course, is the bucket list of who do I need to get on my side for this? And you want to do that before the crowdfunding campaign even starts, right? Let's say I'm making I'm trying to think of a good match here. Let's just say I'm making a first-person shooter, and I know somebody at FaZe Clan or somebody like that, some large organization. They're not going to do it for free, of course, or not as officially, but maybe unofficially, I could get one of the players to, help me out, right? So you need to be reaching out to people before you launch that Kickstarter campaign, getting them lined up and ready to go. You want them to be on your side, to be excited about the thing, and even up to involving them with the creation of the assets. I always said the best thing about hiring content creators to do voice work for you is that it's free publicity, because they're going to promote the fact that they're in the game, and it's like the backdoor way to get somebody to cover your product, and get usually some okay voice acting out of it as well, as an example. Anyway, lining people up prior to launch. Then the standard stuff, the standard PR stuff at launch of, I've got a Kickstarter. You need, in my opinion, something to show, something to play. So you need, you can't just have a Kickstarter, hey, I've got a dream, and I want you to help me make it a reality. You need to have the reality already in hand. So I'm sure that's been said many, many times. You need something you can send people to play and promote. They can't just promote the concept of your Kickstarter. After that, I don't know. You just take a bath in money, I suppose.
Well, I mean, we've had Anya on here like multiple times, and one of the things that she always says, and it's a really good takeaway that I wasn't aware of until we started, talking to her about this stuff. And if you don't know Anya, she's the director of games at Kickstarter, so she knows a little bit about this sort of stuff.
Anya Combs?
Yeah. Yep.
I know her.
Yes.
She and I worked together back when she was at Addicting Games at Nickelodeon.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, small industry here.
Yeah, that's what you learn really when you talk to somebody who's been around as long as Jay and I, is everybody knows everybody.
Yes. But I mean, Anya always says
it
comes 70 to 80% of the revenue from your Kickstarter comes from the community that you already have. So you have to go into that Kickstarter realizing you're not going to find a bunch of money that way. You've got to build that community from the ground up. That's the first part. If you don't have that community ready and that community behind you when you go live, you're not going to get nearly as much as a reception as you think you might. All right, so next question from Lee over on YouTube. How do you feel about selling NFTs to raise development funds?
I don't have a strong opinion about it. I if you can, like, if I assume we're talking about selling sort of part of the game, assets in the game, or similar, maybe even rights to the game in part or in whole. If you can find somebody willing to throw down money for such a thing, and you're okay with what you're giving away, I don't have a problem with it. My only general gripe about NFTs in general is, first, they're entirely built on trust. Most things are. We trust that Steam won't go away tomorrow and remove my library of games. Similarly, NFTs, you trust that people will continue to believe that that NFT is the thing it points to, right? So if it's a web URL pointing to an image, that web URL won't change, and that the image, that NFT has value. And so one, you have to accept that. I'm not an NFT expert, by the way, but two, I'm on the fence about the environmental impact of NFTs. So I'm always like a little concerned about like people not understanding that. So I just want to throw that out there, that NFTs are very energy intensive to create, sell, and transact with. So as long as you're okay with that, and or the transaction is of value enough to offset that, then I don't have a problem with it. Kind of a non-answer.
It's way early on all of this stuff. That's the reality of it. All right, so from Berry Zoo, what makes you want to donate to a crowdfunded product?
What makes me want to donate to a crowdfunded project? Almost nothing, because I believe I'm against like early access games, let alone like crowdfunded games. Personally, like, don't get me wrong, I'll sell your crowdfunded game, I'll sell your early access game to the moon. But personally, I like the concept of paying for something and getting it, not paying for the idea that something might someday exist. That aside, I think what makes most people want to donate is very much a knee-jerk passion response, right? You get it's all about hype, is what makes people want to donate. You need to build real excitement over a product, or whether that's physical or digital. It has to promise the moon, and whether it delivers the moon is essentially unimportant. It has to promise something that will really get people excited. And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be like, I'm promising the first full dive virtual reality headset, right? You don't have to promise the moon in that regard. You have to promise like, this is going to be a game with community that you will love, right? Like the kind of community that 20 years you'll have some guy on a podcast talking about a mud he played, like that level of commitment, and you have to deliver it in a way that people will believe it, right? And I think that's what makes people want to pay money, essentially.
This is where Joe and I can get on like our old person get off my lawn, scenario. It's every time a game comes out and A, the servers don't work at launch, or B, something goes haywire with what they pre-ordered. I'm sitting here at my, staring at my phone or looking at my PC going, why the fuck are you still pre-ordering games? It's like that. Yes, it made sense years and years ago. And I actually pre-ordered 2 copies of Diablo 2 back in the day because I didn't know which one I was going to get first. And I damn sure wanted to have it on day one. That's a little bit of what's happened, to Kickstarter for me. It's like, I don't sign on to nearly as many of them as I used to, because I'm just like, look, if it's good, it's going to make it to market. It'll get done and I can get it then. But early access is, to me, a whole nother brilliant thing that Steam and the community has done in general. Think about how much effort we used to have to put into getting on the beta. And it's like, if you wanted to be in the beta for a Diablo or a World of Warcraft or for whatever game that was coming out, you had to know somebody. And trust me, all of us behind the scenes were calling in those favors at different companies. It's like, yo, get me in the beta for this. I want to play this. And it went from that to, I don't know if it was Steam themselves or some developer going, wait a minute. what if we just charged people to get into our betas and made money while we were doing it? And I'm like, okay, see, that's absolutely, brilliant. And I do see the value of early access, and I do, get in on early access games, but it's also because there's always something, there that I can look at and I can play and I can watch it evolve. Now, granted, what normally happens is I get in on the early access and then I play it for a little bit, and then I'm like, I really want to play this when it's done, and then I don't touch it again until it goes, full live and that sort of stuff. But yes,
see, I have the opposite problem. I'm not saying I never buy early access games. For the record, I do, but my problem is I buy a game in early access, I play it a bunch, and then I stop playing it. It launches and I don't come back to it because I feel like I've already done everything I want to do in the game. Maybe there's tons of stuff I missed, but I've already burned myself out on it.
You should adopt my model. That's what I do. I bought Baldur's Gate. I played it for a little bit, and then I was like, I have shit in there, and I'm getting a little crash-tastic over here. I'm gonna just wait for it to come out. I did it with Subnautica too, and I played the hell out of that game. And then it got to launch, and I was like, I've already seen the vast majority of this stuff. But then I went and played it
I'll
again.
probably
anyway.
come back to Baldur's Gate 3, but I'm not certain of that even.
What I don't like is when you get like an early access game and it's awesome, and then they keep working on it and working on it, and then it starts to suck.
Yeah, it was like,
Well, that's because you didn't give enough feedback then.
that's
You
called
failed in
feature
your
creep.
job.
Well, no, it's like leave the game as it is. Quit putting stuff in it. Quit doing this. Quit changing it. Quit making it
My
better.
favorite, and this is my favorite game of the pandemic was Blaseball.
Mhm.
And that was the whole plot of Blaseball. I don't know if you guys followed Blaseball at all, or anybody.
I didn't play it, but I know what it is. Yes.
The concept was that they're telling a story that adding more stuff does not make a game better. That was the meta story that was really being told. And they did it live, so that by the end of Blaseball, you had people who had been in the game the entire time. They had no idea what was going on. Like, they couldn't follow the game anymore because it had become so bloated and complex. And then the whole world ended.
Right.
That's how it ended. That's how they
And then
ended the
everything
game.
went to
And
shit.
they're going to bring it back supposedly.
Yeah,
I think honestly, it was the singular most brilliant game concept I've ever seen in my entire career.
really.
Yeah, there's
Okay, what's
nothing
it?
that's ever been like it,
Blaseball.
and may never be something like it, where you have a game that is telling a story about game development secretly, like without anybody else realizing it for months.
I didn't realize that that's what they were doing. I just thought it was an absolute off the wall random. Dan, if you're not familiar, take a roguelike RPG system where there's like all these different attributes you can get and turn that into a baseball team. And
I would say take a baseball simulator and combine it with Cthulhu.
yes, but with all of the prefixes and suffixes of like a Diablo, so there's all completely broken mechanics that you can get in there, and yeah, it was. But I honestly I did not realize that
So yeah, the way it worked is every week they would add a new feature to the game, so to speak, right? And they called they had different eras, but every week there was something new they would add to the game, and every week something new would add complexity to the game until it reached this sort of breaking point. And it was actually pretty clearly stated by them that that's the story they were trying to tell, is that more is not necessarily more.
Wow.
Sometimes
So it started out where you're just like jumping in place or something, and then after a while you're like
after a while it's dwarf forces.
It started out with something simple like a standard 1-2 counts, and I don't know, maybe just the weather is currently peanuts, and that's like it's raining peanuts. Like, okay, that's weird. And it eventually gets to the point where it's like, I've got a guy, he's got this equipment, he's got the stadium has like 10 different mods attached to it. I've got like the player with 10 different mods attached to him. Like there's like 3 meta games going on in the background at the same time that you have to follow. Like it was intense and brilliant. So my hat's off to
So what about once you play
developers
the
up in
update,
Seattle.
you can't go backwards, right? And play it. You can't.
Yeah,
play it.
no, you can't. It was all done in real time.
That's awesome.
But I mean, and players love the game too. It has an actual band. like fans of the Seattle garages created a garage band, a live garage band that they have an album out on Spotify if you want to find it.
What the shit?
Yeah, you really missed a whole cultural revolution during the pandemic. I mean, I was trapped inside for a long time, so.
And this is how far things can go off the rails when everybody's stuck at home with nothing to do for 2 years. It's completely randomness that's out there. But all right, Joe, thank you so much. I am so freaking sorry it took you forever to get on this thing, but that's my world.
2-year wait, well worth it.
Oh.
Let's not wait another 2 years.
Right.
No. Now you're one of us, and
One of you. One of us.
I'll get you promoted on the Discord to guest of the show and all that fancy stuff that we do. All right, so everybody out there, remember in 2 weeks, oh God, my brain is going to die. The next Indie Game Business Session event is coming up. We've already got a fantastic group of speakers. We're still solidifying some of those speakers as well. It's completely free to come on and listen to the speakers and even interact, ask questions, because a lot of the stuff that we're going to do is panel AMAs. We do ask that you get a ticket, even though it's free, simply because that's how we'll send you the slide decks and stuff that everybody, will have. And that's always everybody's question in the middle of a presentation. It's like, can we get the slide deck? Yes, you can. Dan actually emails everybody that got a nice little Dropbox folder that has all that stuff in it. And if you do want to do meetings, I mean, we've got tons of publishers coming. We've got lots of developers. There's over 40 some projects already in the showcase. It's a $50 ticket. And if you use the code friend of IGB, you'll get 20% off of that.
Don't tell nobody.
Yeah. And the other big secret is if you're a developer and you've got a demo and you need a publisher and you can't afford a $50 ticket, message me and I'll give you one, because this is the way. This is what we do. This is the way. This is the way. Yes.
This is the way.
But yes, aside from that,
you'd be amazed how much free stuff you can get just by asking. That's the real marketing takeaway.
It is. It's absolutely is. Are you going to GDC, Joe?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I'll be there. I'll be over at the Meet the Match area, because I have to get out and travel and see people in real life at some point.
I just came back from Florida, and that was enough
Oh,
trouble.
yeah, that's where Dan is.
That's where I'm at. Whoop.
And Dan catches COVID like every other week.
Not wearing masks.
So it's
That's what it is here. There's no lockdown. There's no nothing.
I know. I was in the mall and it was terrifying.
And people are just doing. It's like normal here.
All right, I gotta roll. Joe, thank you so much.
Yes.
Dan, you got anything you want to roll out with?
Yes, I do. If you're not on the Discord, why not? That's just ridiculous. No.
Yes.
Discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. Like Jay said, we got 4,000 industry.
Almost
4,000 industry. With you joining, it might be 4,000 industry people in there. I'm excited for 2 weeks. Maybe we'll do something next Friday. Maybe we won't. It just depends.
4 days before an event. It's like,
we'll let you know last minute what's going to happen.
Don't.
And of course, you can find us and me, AntlionAudio.com.
Yep. And also, Joe's Twitter is in the description here, which is basically at Antlion.
Yeah, we have a giveaway going on too right now on Twitter. So
and job openings.
Job openings.
Get into the marketing side of the industry.
Marketing chops.
And tell Joe that you heard about it on our show, and he'll give you a 30% pay increase.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. On that note, thanks everybody, and we won't see you next Friday. I'll go ahead and tell you that, because my brain's about to explode as it is. But we will see you on the 9th and the 10th for the next Indie Game Business Sessions.
I'm streaming though. See that right there?
Yes, Dan can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I'm streaming. And I'm doing controversial content on my channel, so come on.
All righty.
Typical Florida man.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's right. All right. Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.